How's it going?
It's going great, Dylan. How are you?
Doing
You
good. Doing good.
guys had a long and productive day.
Yeah. We're gonna roll right into the next one, right? This is the last panel of the day. We've been going strong since 8 o'clock, but this is one you definitely should stay tuned in for. I know there's going to be a tremendous amount of value. We have some of the best operators you can be learning from and brokers when it comes to mobile home parks, and there is a tremendous amount of opportunity to be taken advantage of in these next few years on the mobile home park space. So. We're going to learn about why. We're going to learn about how. So very excited to dive into that. Do we have everyone here on the line? Is everyone tuning in?
Yes. We have Spencer Roan is
Okay.
here. Charles D. Hart, the house. Matt Battinger.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, how's it going? Well,
Doing well.
Great. Well, no, we're super excited to have you guys on here. We've been learning about all different types of real estate today, and I know there's been an increasing amount of attention towards mobile home parks, and really more than anything on today's session, want to give the audience a nice starting off with a big picture overview of always what are the opportunities and what are the risks involved with it, and who it would be a good fit for. So if you want to start off, love to just go around the group and just introduce yourself and just share with us, just a bit of background on your experience in the mobile home park space, and then we'll jump into it. So, Katerina, you want to start us off?
Sure, of course. Yes, Dylan, thank you for having us. We are equally excited to be here and discuss the business we so passionate about and I think really enjoy doing. My name is Katerina Stepanova. I am here with my partner, Matt Battinger, who is based in Atlanta. I am in New York. We are mobile home park owners, investors, operators as well. And that's been my journey for the past 3 years. So I'm the newest in the group by far. Everyone on this panel tonight has a much longer and much more diverse experience. I came to mobile home park space from first single family investing, and then when I found that opportunity in that niche, I really enjoyed, I guess, the warm welcome of the industry and other operators in the field and the industry, and was learning ever since. Was introduced to Matt Battinger by my first mentor in the industry, Charles D. Hart, who will cover much more of the ins and outs of how the industry works. And so we became partners over, I would say, probably over 2 years ago. And since we completed 4 deals, and we wholesaled one along the way, but otherwise we just enjoy owning and operating parks that are in Florida and Michigan. And that's been my short experience so far.
And I have to give you credit for getting the whole group here together in short notice this week to put together the panel. So definitely appreciate that.
Awesome.
And, Matt, do you want to follow off that?
Yeah. So Matt Bettinger. As Katrina said, that we've been partners for a couple of years, and I think it's been great, right? I think it's a great balance, and we've got a third who isn't on, Nick, who's our third partner, and we've been at it for about 2 years. I've been in it maybe for somewhere between 5 and 6 years, and it's been great. I think the industry is, it's definitely fun. It's definitely interesting. The day-to-day operation things, once you get into that, it's just a very odd, everybody's got a story, right? With the way, things happen differently than in other kind of sectors of the real estate market. But, it's fun. And I think that in here, I think that there are a lot of people who want to share their knowledge, a lot more than in other industries, and specifically for mobile home parks too, even. And it's been a great journey, right, so far, and we're still kind of looking to grow and and get smarter and better.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Now, Charles, I know we haven't met yet, but I've already learned a ton from you virtually just through the content that you've put out there. So definitely excited to hear from you. If you want to just give a brief introduction on your background and track record in the space.
Sure. I got started in mobile home parks about 6 years ago. I came over from single family, did a very small amount of single family home stuff. Got into the business. Picked it up really quick. It was to me, the business came kind of easy. So picked it up pretty quick, wound up starting out in the ownership side, bought 20 parks over the course of maybe 4 or 5 years. And then since then I've switched over to brokering and have been doing that for about maybe a year. So that's basically, I spent time as a podcaster for the industry, and then also had a coaching program, pretty small one, that a lot of the students actually wound up buying parks as well. So
yeah, like me.
Yeah. I think we had like 40 students, and I think 20 or so wound up buying parks.
Wow, not too shabby.
Not too bad.
Right. Now, Spencer.
Yeah, thank you all very much for having me. Thank you, Katarina, for inviting me. It's nice to meet Rashad and Dylan.
Good to meet you too.
Twice.
I guess I'm the old man of the group here. I started with low-income apartment properties in the 80s. That was a real seminar in the high maintenance. I got the first 3 mobile home parks in the 80s, another one in the 90s. So we now have 4, 3 in Georgia, 1 in Texas, a total of about 450 lots, and enough land to add about 50 more lots. We are a dealer. We became a dealer close to 30 years ago. At this point, we've sold about 375 houses in our 4 communities with seller financing. So that's where we are.
Mm-hmm. So, you want to start us? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just wanted to mention Spencer has been extremely modest. First off, for the summit, it's called Atlanta Real Estate Summit. So Spencer is also, so is Matt, based out of Atlanta, and Spencer for many years was leading and hosting the SICO conference. This is a Southeast conference for mobile home park owners, operators, and friends of the industry. That was one of the most welcoming events happening in mobile home park industry during the year. So, and it's been taking place in Atlanta for multiple years, and Spencer Rohn is a co-founder of that amazing event.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, if the event's still going on.
Well, yes, as Katarina said, we have, this would be our 10th year. We had about 450 attendees last year. Before COVID, we were projecting 600 attendees this year. As Katarina said, it's a nonprofit organization, and our byline, if we have one, is that this is put on by community owners for community owners. So there is no profit-oriented motivation behind it, no larger company involved in it. These are mostly small and mid-size community owners who come together, and as Karina mentioned a while ago, to talk about the management of communities and money-making ideas, and basically how we, who really don't compete with each other, can help one another. This year, things are obviously a little bit up in the air with the virus. We probably will not meet on a face-to-face basis because we have done so in October in the past, and I think it's highly unlikely that we're going to be able to assemble that size group that quickly. So we are looking into a virtual meeting. So I'm glad to participate in this. This is a learning experience for me. As Katerina and Matt can attest, I'm sure SECO has involved a great deal of interaction in the past. And one of our big reservations with the virtual format is that we want to be sure that if we do it, we can provide the same level of interaction with the attendees and with the exhibitors and the sponsors and everybody who usually attends on a face-to-face basis. Mm-hmm. So the jury is still out as to whether we're going to try to get together, quote unquote, this year.
All right. Well, excellent. Well, if you do, I'm sure we'll have to send it out to everyone here on the call today to make sure everyone gets some, that on their radar.
Sure. Thank you.
Of course. Now to start off, I just want to give everyone, because we do have a broad audience, I'd like to just first start off, give them a big picture overview of the opportunity in the space as well as the risk, right? So we just discussed with self-storage, there's the opportunity for high cash flow. It seems to be more mom and pop owners. And I say more comparing, obviously my background's mostly in apartment space, and we had a lot of multifamily on earlier today. But just I guess if you wanted to start off by giving us a sense, I know there's talk of kind of a consolidation to some degree of going from many owners in the space, a lot of mom and pop owners in the space, into more, we can call it sophisticated investors in the space that have more scale. What's the shift in demand from? Like, what's the uptick in demand coming from? What is the opportunity, and what risks should people be aware of as they're viewing the space?
Charles, you probably just would have the highest overview of the situation.
Okay. I'd say from an opportunity standpoint, there's probably, relative to traditional multifamily, the mom and pop profile of our industry is probably 50%, as opposed to 10% or so in multifamily. But with that, I think as far as if you look at risk of the industry, I think our biggest risk in the industry is, I think it's actually been some of the aggressive rent stuff that's happened has been the biggest risk for property owners. And it really depends on what state you're in. But that's been the biggest risk for property owners. And I've gotten into the weeds on that before. And it's one of those things where, our industry, the tenants actually own their own homes. And so when you raise the rent aggressively underneath, when they own their own homes, they're kind of a captive audience in that way. So you have to kind of scale back on some of those things. I'd say as far as other risks, aside from things that are at the property level, regulatory risk is always there, just like with any low income housing. But outside of that, it's probably the least risky asset class in real estate, I'd have to say. There's, for your average community, there's very little that can hurt you as far as like major capital expense items. I think that's what the appeal is for a lot of these, you might call them sophisticated investors. There are a lot of them that are just guys that are getting pushed out of multifamily and into, they're trying to stay in the multifamily arena, and they're just now discovering mobile home parks, and they're kind of bringing a little bit of their pricing methodology into it. And so it's pushed our cap rates down a little bit. And that's been good for everyone who's owned, guys like Spencer who have owned for 30 years. That's been great for them because we've had exponential pricing growth over the last 5-10 years in our industry. So it's been good for everyone who's owned, but it's definitely a consolidation movement. And it's much like what maybe self-storage experienced 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago.
So Charles, you said it's the least risky of real estate investments. What about the return? How does that, on that scale of low risk, is the return the same, greater or smaller?
For an at-market property, I would say from a risk-adjusted standpoint, the returns are probably better than just about anything you could get, any asset vertical, commercial real estate. Things are like with multifamily, people are buying with like 2-point spreads over their interest rate. With our industry, it's like a 2.5-point spread. So we've already get better returns than your traditional apartment housing by a little bit. And then just there's not much that can go wrong when the tenants own their own homes. They take care of their own maintenance, unlike with an apartment building. And as a park owner, you're responsible primarily for like the infrastructure, like the roads, water, sewer lines. And those typically don't need to be replaced all at once. You can kind of patch sections of them together, at once. So you don't typically have a water line go bad on you in the entire property. So you're typically replacing small sections of these CapEx things. It's been my experience. It's been very rare that we've ever had a major capital item. But with like apartments, you might have a roof replacement or something in that nature that might cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
No, that's great. It really does echo a lot of what we were talking about earlier during the post-pro panel with Dave and Alvin before. Was we were talking about our duty as operators, because even in the multifamily space, there's a lot more of this private equity kind of max the rents out and kind of do as much as you can to improve the property in a few years. But we were talking about, is that really sustainable? And at a certain point, is that going to influence legislation to start cracking down on putting rent control in place more frequently? And is it going to hurt us as operators? And to what you're saying, it sounds like that's even more of a posing threat in mobile homes, in a sense, due to the fact that it does cost owners a lot of money to move out of mobile home, right? So if people are being extreme and trying to take advantage of that versus being moderate about their increases, then that could pose a threat to the space. Is that pretty much where you're going?
Yeah, and it already has. And most of the problems in rent control have always traditionally been, blue states. But that's been where a lot of the actions happen lately, is places like New York and to some degree Illinois and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now let's talk just basic numbers as far as cash on cash. I know we just talked to Stacy. She said that typically she's recommending on the self-storage looking for double-digit returns. What are you typically looking for in terms of a target yield once the property's, say, stabilized, or even if it's not? Maybe do you have a base minimum target return that you'd recommend for operators?
You guys want to take that one, or do you want me to take that one?
I'll take a shot at it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, as Charlie said, we have seen cap rates get down to some almost dangerous levels over the past 5 years or so. So what some of us look for in a deal is very difficult to find nowadays. But if someone asked me what I was looking for, what I would buy, I would like to buy an 8% cap rate. I'd look for a community that was well maintained. Unfortunately, a lot of sellers and brokers trump up the value of these old homes, referred to as park-owned homes. And in actuality, many of those are as much a liability as they are an asset, because they literally have to be hauled out of the park. So you not only lose the income, you spend a couple $1,000 getting rid of the house. It's nice to have a community with some vacant lots. one of the opportunities in this business is filling a vacant lot with a new home. And if you look at it from the standpoint of that lot not producing any revenue, and then you go bring in a brand new home and you bring in a nice resident, you upgrade the community with both the resident and the house, you're increasing the cash flow, adding, if the rent is $400 a month and 30% operating expense ratio and a 7% cap rate or so, you're looking at about $50,000 that occupied lot then adds to the value of the mobile home park. So you do that with 100 lots and you're talking about $5 million worth of value that you can add by filling those lots. So I like that upside potential, if you will, in properties that I would look at. Also, you see some properties that have septic tanks in Georgia. The Georgia clay frequently does not perk very well. So a lot of times communities in a high density situation will have problems if they have septic tanks. I would prefer not to have any. I do have one property with a wastewater treatment plant and would not shy away from another community if that plant were well maintained.
Is this typically, are you typically looking at these with a longer term horizon on what's the typical hold for most operators in the space? Is it typically long term, or is it a lot of people going for a 5 to 7 year hold?
If you're asking, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it really, you know, I think it's really individualistic, right? But when I look at things, I mean, you know, one of the parks that you know, that Katrina and I bought, you know, it was, I mean, we really kind of consider it more of a flip where we went in and we rehabbed a bunch of homes and kind of, you know, put people on a lease option or, you know, lease option purchase, you know, and it's a smaller park, but it looked like it was opportunistic, but you know, it's really probably too small to hold on long term. You know, but I think it really depends on where you are. And, you know, the other one that we own is in Michigan, and that one, you know, it's kind of the same deal where we're, you know, doing a lot of rehab, doing a lot of, you know, increase in occupancy, but that one I think we'll probably hold on to a lot longer. So it kind of depends on where you are in the game and what your, you know, just what your preferences are, right?
Yeah, it does seem though, like from the people that we would often meet and talk to, a lot of people are looking for value add opportunities, and when they hear the time horizon being 3 to 5 years, that's something that they kind of feel more connected with. When they say, if you were to bring them opportunity of 7 to 10 years, that looks like a long way out and might not be as attractive. However, it's all very subjective. Obviously the long-term wealth and you know, our team, for example, is we are aiming to hold long-term. Just the first deal, it just so happened it was opportunistic. It just came and it was looking like we could benefit from learning some things and doing some things and also building track records. So we just took it and we did learn on it, and we still operate in it. And with Charles's help, we're going to be selling it. So that's why I you know, it's so great to even in the virtual format to have this event and you know, meet people, because that's how it all works. You know, someone is working with you, then introduces you to another person, and this is how your network, this is how your kind of network and outreach grows. So that's probably one of the things that got me really attracted to the industry. Just lots of great people to work with.
Yeah, I agree.
And you know, I like to say, unfortunately, that's oftentimes the way that most equity sources are going to be, right? They like the velocity, they like the short-term horizon because they can see it, it's tangible. It's always harder to find the patient money that's okay with long-term hold, although I think a lot of us would prefer that, right? So it's just a matter of being able to find the right people, and sometimes you have to play the game to what your equity wants, right? So you know, that's definitely the case, and I've experienced that, you know, firsthand many times. And we have a question from Alex. Alex, do you want to pop in and ask away? It looks like you got a few questions there.
Yeah. So the first one is, what data sources are you guys going to pull the mobile home park list? Because list source data is kind of shitty, so I'm wondering, like, where else are you pulling this list from?
You have to build that completely yourself almost. You can start with a list. I think, what is it, Snickfish that gives one away?
But is it? I thought you can go to MH. What is it?
Village, MH Village, yeah.
MH Village. You go to mhvillage.com. And this is kind of where it's a long process. I mean,
well yeah, Charles
Katrina,
was the one. Well, no, Charles was the one who broke it down step by step.
Yeah.
But Charles, I think the initially was MH Village, and then this is like preliminary list of parks based on the state, but then you need to scrap that list and build it out more based on the criteria that your investors will be interested in. But I think Charles knows the steps because he pretty much laid them all out.
Yeah, and Charles, didn't you have a podcast out there that kind of lays that out step by step? I think you did, didn't you?
Yeah, it's.
So what's the process, Charles?
I'll send the link out if that'll help for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said Snickfish. What were you? I didn't get that website.
Yeah, it was there's a company that I think that's what it was, Snickfish.
It's a title company that actually gives a list of they have a resource page that gives out a list of them.
It's just a list of the parks and the addresses. Everything else you got to get, like the owner's information and all that stuff. You would have to track down yourself.
Yeah, I'll send you this podcast because it's you know, we could take the whole hour in breaking this down, but I think for anyone that's looking to build a list, that was one of the ones that was done a while back that I think does a really good job at when Charles breaks down this step by step.
Yeah.
Hey Charles, I got a question for you. You said when you got in the mobile home park industry, you scaled up pretty fast. Why do you think that was? What did you do differently?
It was that podcast. That podcast gave us the ability to raise capital. My old partner and I, we took our time. Probably took 2 years to find our first deal. Ended up buying 5. The first year after we bought the first one, so that first 12 months after that first deal went, we bought 5, and then started raising money from podcast listeners. Bought 5 more in 2017, and then bought right around 10 in 2018.
Charles, you had like 3
really
funds, right?
What's that?
It was like you raised 3 funds, I believe, right?
No, it's 2.
2 funds, yeah.
Yep.
So that's the scalability right there. Plus the database. Charles put together this database, very thorough. So went straight to owners and raised funds, went straight to scale.
Probably could have bought a lot more if I hadn't taught everyone how to build databases.
It sounds like you want to build out a way of reaching out to the owners when you're buying, and then when you're selling, you call Charles.
There you go.
Yeah, call either me or Glenn. But yeah, I mean, it's direct to owner is always probably the best approach. You know, as a broker, I mean, my job is to price it to market, and if you're not, you know, there's a lot of buyers out there who, you know, for every 100 buyers, there's probably like 5 or 6 who, you know, they scale their business through their operations and they buy stuff from brokers because it doesn't make sense for them to go direct to owner. But I mean, if you're part of the other group, I mean, direct to owner is the way to go.
Yeah, that's actually what Glenn Esterson, Charles's partner, we were just talking earlier this week, and that's exactly what he said. He said, if you're just starting out and you just one man show, or maybe have a partner, or and just getting started, it's rather hard to find something of that quality and a price point that you might really be looking for. So going to direct to owner might be the way when you get in started, and then you get your feet wet, and then you maybe sell that park or keep it, and then the brokers will know you more, so you build that track record. That's kind of how we are going.
So let's hit on, what are some of the landmines that we should watch out for?
Private utilities mostly. Private utilities are probably the biggest landmine.
As far as that you're paying the utilities versus bill back?
Yeah, just a privately owned utility system. And it's not really just because the utility system is bad necessarily. It's because they're typically just ancient. The park's built in the 60s and it's got septics from the 60s. It's just a matter of time. It's like a hot potato.
Yep.
Yeah. And I would say though that I think the more experience you get, right, the less those things matter though. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, because you hear, you always hear about like wastewater treatment plants, but Spencer has one, right? And I don't know if I'd be able to do that, right? I think that might still scare me, but my first one that I bought was had septic tanks, and now we've got, Katrina and I and Nick have the one with master meter electric, right? But we're working hopefully to turn that around to make it public. So I think when you come in, my opinion, you want like the most straightforward kind of deal with utilities. But I mean, the more experience you get, the less those kind of things really scare you, in my opinion. It's just my opinion.
And
What about
Spencer,
as far as the market goes? What about what kind of areas do you want to stay away from? Is there anything in particular, the markets? Do you want to stay out of areas that are below a certain threshold in income? Job decrease?
Most people want to stay in metros that are anywhere between 50 and 100,000 people plus. Really what you're looking for is market risk. So you don't want to see that the market has one employer, that it relies on, one employer or just a group of like 3 or 4. So you want to see that there's not a risk of like one employer going under and pulling the whole area down. Outside of that, you just want to make sure that you're not in competition with other forms of housing. So you don't want to be, I think it's kind of funny that, I've spoken to a lot of people coming into the industry, like as they're getting started. And a lot of them, for whatever reason, they think just because it's low income housing, they want to be in like low income areas. And that's not true. You actually want to be quite the opposite of that. You want the low income housing in the highest income areas. Mm-hmm. But typically, just as long as you're not competing, like if you're renting a mobile home or if you're selling a mobile home, you don't want to be in direct competition with the apartment pricing. You want to be priced a little bit below that. So you want to see that you're not in competition with local apartments, or that some guy can't, buy a single family home with the same monthly payment as they can buy your, mobile home for, kind of thing.
So earlier today we had David Kahn on, and he's a CoStar data analyst in Atlanta, and he was walking us through the trends in apartments and saying that right now, I was actually surprised a bit to hear that the C class has been the best performing, right? Even amidst everything that's taking place with COVID, and we look at that and we can say that, well, the CARES Act, I believe it is, that's has the unemployment benefits is probably a large part of that, right? Because unemployment is so high, and I imagine that's carrying mobile home residents as well. So how much of a threat do you think that is if say, there's talks that it's likely that it will continue on as long as needed. But if that does stop after the set deadline right now, how much of a threat is that to mobile home park owners?
I mean, that probably depends on your tenant profile, but a lot of tenants in our industry already get checks from the government. If that's what you mean, they're
Yep.
the collection issues. Just we've not seen them. Owners that have reported to us in April and May, we just haven't seen any real collection issues outside of like geographical issues. Your average park is collecting just about the same money that it was before this started.
So they're getting some kind of, I don't even know what you call it in this instance, some government assistance to pay for their mortgage if it's a owner-owned home, or
no, just a lot of our residents are older, so they're on SSI or Social Security and stuff like that. I mean, that kind of comes with the territory. Outside of that, a lot of our residents just get government assistance, and I mean, with what the government's doing with unemployment and stuff like that, that might affect us. Someone who's out of work they're actually making probably more money now with unemployment than they were working, and that might come back to bite us at some point. But I don't know. Our industry is still it still feels really safe, even with all this going on.
That's good. That's good.
And when we saw the virus basically didn't show up until the middle to the latter part of March. So by then, collections were already fairly well established. So we didn't expect much of a problem in March, but April was a real concern to us, and we ended up coming through the month of April very well. We didn't notice any significant increase in delinquencies or collection problems. And then I just got the report today on May, and it looks like May is going to be about the same as April. So I think when someone's housing expense is as low as it is in our communities, lot rent frequently in the neighborhood of $300 or $400 or $500 a month, and a lot of times we're dealing with residents who have multiple jobs. Father will have a second job, mother will be working. So these are not $200,000 a year executives who go from 200 to zero. When they lose one job, they frequently pick up another. So as far as we're concerned, so far, we have not been affected by COVID, but we know that those bonus unemployment checks are going to run out in July, I think it is. So we're certainly keeping an eye on that time frame. And then the other thing is, I think that even though from a strict financial point of view, we are doing as well now as we were several months ago, we are certainly working harder. We're spending more time working with problem residents. We're contacting charities to help those residents who need help. We're dealing with problems on a one-on-one basis. We're helping people to find jobs if they were laid off. So our managers are working a little bit harder now than they did before. But so far, I don't think we've been hurt by this virus.
And I think what's interesting is tenants, we're watching collections and tenants, whether they've been affected or not, and doing our best, obviously working with them. On another scale, I think a couple of weeks back, we just had a conversation with Brian Burke. He's multifamily investor and operator, syndicator for sure. And he was saying that right now we don't really see any significant change in maybe collections, but his prediction was just, he says, wait for another 6 months, then we'll see how we're faring out. And I think here, just to say something, again, probably coming back to the approach of network and collaboration, because then when I feel like operators who might not have had significant resources or reserves in place might be reaching out more actively to those who have been through cycles before, asking for guidance and support. So I guess just one more time to, the cautious advice to be cautiously optimistic. And when you are out in the market right now, looking at your first mobile home community, have all this in mind, that you do need significant reserves. And I think at last SECO, someone was saying 10% of your purchase price, I believe, in reserves. It's just has to happen because you will need it. And so I would probably say, no matter what, things will come up. And Charles mentioned earlier, private utilities, even though you do thorough due diligence before you purchase, things happen. And if you were like in the middle, we just started our water submetering in the park, in one of the parks, right? And then COVID happened, so we had to stop and like halfway and store meters and safeguard them, and all kinds of things happen. So this is very unexpected, but it's really wait and see game how it's all going to play out, maybe in 6 months or so. So I think the fundamentals are still the same as they always are. Those who bought it right and managed it right, I guess it will be not so much of a difference, but for everyone else who might be looking at, just I guess be cautious. And the due diligence is still due diligence, fundamentals still fundamentals, regardless if it's mobile home parks, storage, or multifamily.
So I believe it was Glenn that you had on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he said something about occupancy being one of the biggest opportunities that he likes in this, right? Which coming from the apartment space, I see that as one of the riskiest things, because you wonder how am I going to manage it better than they're managing it, right? In that sense. So why is it so much different in this space in terms of, or why is it an opportunity? Is it because the lot is so cheap that you're not buying the home, you're just buying like an empty lot, or you're buying a home you're just valuing the home at very little when it's empty? Why is there opportunity in the occupancy one versus that being seen as a threat because they weren't able to find someone to move in there? Do you follow me?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say just really quick, and then I will step back from that. One of the things he mentioned, and remember how he was harping on location, because if there are empty spaces, and usually when you purchase in the park, and that's kind of what we did, we're not paying for the lot that is not producing income, so it's free. However, the infrastructure that's underneath that lot is not free, but it's already in place. And then Spencer is actually who is a master of bringing in new homes, and who taught I think so many people in the industry, this is how you do it, and not buying the used home, but bringing a new home, and you will just do so much better on the long run. So I guess that's how this would work. Empty lot, if it's in a strong economic location, and I'm sure Spencer could share more how he does this and what's the logic behind what the mechanics of it.
Well, we became believers probably 30 years ago with the idea of selling houses instead of renting them. And there are many community owners, and I guess that's one of the interesting things about this business, is that there are different strokes for different folks. Some people do well renting manufactured homes. They rent the house along with the lot, just like someone would rent a single family house. We tried that for a while. We felt like we didn't get the permanent resident that we were looking for. And we also found that we had a lot higher turnover than we wanted. So a long time ago, we began selling houses instead of renting them. And about 10 years ago, we stopped buying any used houses and only bought new houses. Initially, we were buying more single-wide, less expensive new homes. But we found almost by accident that we had a much better, much quicker sale and a much lower default rate on the more expensive double-wide houses. So a while ago, we were talking about why our industry may not experience problems that, say, the apartment industry has. I think when you're selling houses and people have paid $7,000 or $8,000, $9,000 for an upfront payment, and they are focused on becoming an owner over a period of 12, 13, 14 years, those folks obviously have a lot more committed to that transaction. And I think they're going to try a whole lot harder to make those payments. So again, I think that our selling houses instead of renting them has been a good thing for us as far as this virus is concerned. And I think it will continue to help us in that regard.
Mm-hmm. All right. Last question for me, and then I want to open up to the audience here. Just when it comes to it's kind of a two-part question, but number one, is there a certain size park, minimum size that you would recommend due to being able to afford better management? And are you always controlling the management? Is it majority of parks being self-managed by the owners, or are there any reputable third-party companies that at a certain size you should be connecting with to manage your parks?
Yeah, I actually have, we actually have both, right? I mean, we manage ourselves, but like one of my parks in Alabama, I use a third party. Another one in Florida, I use a third party. So it just depends, you know what I mean? I know it's kind of strange, but now I'm kind of happy that we're, managing, the one up in Michigan. It depends on your time, right? I mean, I still work full time. I'm not, this isn't my full-time thing. So, you need, if you don't have the time, you should definitely get people to help. It is a little harder to find somebody who's good, because it is a specialty. I don't think that you could get somebody who manages apartment complexes, like that type of property manager, and necessarily be able to do it, because in a lot of cases you're dealing with a different type of clientele. So, but there are people out there. There are good third party operators out there who will do it.
And interestingly enough, Charles, for example, I don't know at which point they operated their own dozens of parks themselves in the house before they outsourced and then came back. So it's kind of probably interesting how what was the experience.
Yeah, we definitely saw a slippage from managing in-house to third-party management, but we had done it in an effort to scale. So that last year that we were buying, we basically took all of our properties. We had 10 at the time. We took them all in June of 2018, and then spent June to November just buying. And so that's the time period when we bought 10 parks. So we did it just because we wanted to scale really fast and we had the money to do it. And then over time brought them back in house. That was the reason why we did it, just to offload the operations. It also allowed them to build the operations kind of without having to run the properties through everything. When you're building a system, you're not trying to like science experiment your people with it.
At the same time.
So they were able to build that system and then bring it back in house and have a good system to train employees on. So that was our purpose for doing it. Probably different than most.
Now, yes, that is interesting. I think it makes sense. You know, we were just talking about that on the operator panel with multifamily earlier too. Is just, yes, if you're scaling, third party is always something to strongly consider because you can free up your time and not drop the ball on that. So I think it depends probably largely on your goals, how many deals you plan on doing, things like that before you consider third party. With the payroll side of it though, are you? I imagine it probably needs to be a decent sized park before you can afford full-time boots on the ground. Is it mostly you know, anything that's say less than, I don't know, 150 or 200? Is it all just part-time labor, and is it mostly people that live on the property, or do these companies just have off-site teams that will just stop by to service?
Well, I can tell you our smallest community is 70 spaces, and we bought that one in 1984, and way back when we were leveraged to the tune of probably 75% loan to value. I remember it was very difficult for us to afford a full-time manager and a full-time maintenance person. Since then, of course, our leverage has come way down and it's not an issue. But over the past 20 years or so, the larger operators, the REITs, used to have a criteria of 200 spaces or more. They were generally not interested in any community less than 200 spaces. They've sort of relaxed that criteria because a lot of the larger parks have already been acquired. So the REITs will look at communities that are less than 200. And of course, over that period of time, lot rents have come up too. But Dylan, I would say generally speaking, certainly 50 spaces would be very difficult, I think, to justify full-time management and maintenance. And I might even push that as high as 75 or 100 spaces as a cutoff.
That would be for one person, or that would be for two?
But generally, we have a maintenance person and a manager who also doubles as a salesperson at each community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Very good. Any questions from Rashad? You got anything? Any questions from the audience?
Let me see. Yes, I think Alex was asking about the buying criteria.
Yeah, what's everyone's buying criteria?
Like, what metrics do you look for? I'm just.
Yeah, it's a little weird, right? So I think people are willing to overpay for, for a certain amount of upside, right? So, the park that we bought in Michigan, I don't know if I can't remember what the exact price on it. What was that, about an 8 cap or something like that, Katrina?
No, it was actually, I believe it was closer to 9.
9. Well, that was a pretty good deal, but honestly, so you've got to look at just your upside too, right? Because this park came with a lot of homes that were empty that you can basically fill up, fix and fill up with other tenants, right? So something like that, you don't want to just you can go below market or above market, on a buy. If that you can put some money in and get it up to above market returns, so if you're just like looking at straight buying criteria for us, I don't know, I would say probably 50 or more, but we broke that on our first buy, didn't we, because it was such a good deal.
Yeah. And yeah,
go ahead.
No, and it was just to the point of, management, because our properties are all out of the states where we are in. So I think it greatly depends on how you plan on managing this. And we always plan to have, always at all times, it's not even a question that there has to be a park manager on site. and we would want a second layer of asset management, and that is whether it's going to be us or a third party. That would be a consideration, and obviously it will be decided prior to us going into the deal. But the buying criteria is we would want, just by nature of our partnership, and that's kind of what we established going in, we would want the value add component. We would not want to buy necessarily stabilized asset, simply because, and we kind of learned that lesson, simply if we need to purchase and invite other partners to buy in with us, this is the people who we know they would want value add, and which means we would want to have 50 spaces plus. We would want, obviously, economically strong. It goes without saying. Economy cannot replace that. Economy location cannot replace that. So that goes without saying. It has to check out, and there has to be upside. And we would want to buy with a spread between the cap rate and the financing, like close to, 3 points. Yes, that's what we're going to be aiming for. And we will be aiming to reach our, let's say, cash on cash, high double, closer to, I would say, 18-20% by year 2, 18-24 months. Yes, that will be our goal. So we.
So with the spread, the spread, you mean like if the interest rates are 6, you want the cap rate to be 9?
Yes.
Right? Okay, got it. All right.
Yep, absolutely. And that is why, it's just not a quick process. If you buy with your own money, not with a fund, that's when you're going to have to be selective, really.
And what about you, Charlie? What's your buying criteria?
Let's see, if I was buying right now, what I would buy is, mine's pretty specific. It would be 75 units and above would be, on a size standpoint, that's what that would be. And really it's more, and I would be in markets where the lot rents were at least 350, right around 350 or more. Outside of that, what I'd be looking for would be an issue that I would basically look at the park as, is there a possibility somewhere in this park's future to qualify for a Fannie Mae loan? But I would hope that wouldn't be on day one, because as going back to your cap rate spread, I would want to price the deal based on a recourse loan of like 5%, take a 7.5 cap, but have the availability after I do my business plan to get a Fannie Mae loan, where those interest rates are 3.5. And so I know from
you can refinance. That's why you would start with the recourse, just so that you can refinance sooner, or?
Well, it depends on the capital source. Just what we brought up before. If I prepped it for sale by year 5 and sold it on a 6 cap, where I bought a 7.5, because that det's available for the purchase loan for the next guy, if that's what the capital partner wanted, then I would do that.
Yep.
But if it was a long-term situation, then we'd refi into Fannie Mae. And depending on how much upside there was available to it, I'd be looking for an opportunity to exit all of the investors' capital by year 5, whether it be through a sale or a refi.
So I think I misspoke on the question. I was thinking, so you'd want to go in with recourse due to the fact that it's a value add deal that Fannie won't get into right away. That's why you would start with the recourse.
I'd want that to be the only purchase option for that park. Might go sell or finance it. Like, I'd want Fannie Mae to not be on the table when I bought it for nobody else. I want my competition to be,
because with the value would be higher if that were okay. Yep. Okay. Makes sense. Cool.
Hey, I got a question for Spencer. A little while ago, he said he bought some pads back in '84. Is that typically your strategy to hold long term forever? That's about a 35-year hold, right?
Yeah, doesn't seem like it's been that long.
That's the year I was born. That's easy math.
One thing I would add to this discussion of buying is, in my experience, it takes a long time to change the personality of a mobile home park. I think that people who expect to buy and flip a mobile home park are very short-sighted and probably do a disservice to the industry, because they're selling at hoping anyway to sell at an inflated price that is probably not going to do anybody any good. But when you buy a mobile home park, invariably you have residents that don't belong. You've got houses that don't belong. You've got hitches that need to be removed. You've got skirting that needs to be replaced. Houses that need to be taken out, just to figure out where the water lines are and the sewer lines are, and probably to convert to individual water meters. All of those kind of things take years. So I always caution people that, in my experience, and hopefully, you know, other folks are a lot smarter than I am, but in my experience, plan on 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years to get a mobile home park to the point where you're proud of it, where you've got the homes and the residents that you want, and that you're on the way toward increasing value. And I'll also add, while I have the podium, that I've been very impressed with the attitude of so many of the participants in the program today, who obviously have the attitude of a long-range plan. People are buying real estate, recognizing that it involves some leverage. They recognize the income associated with it. They pay off the debt over some period of time, and they recognize that 20 years down the road, they're going to be sitting with this free and clear asset. And I think mobile home parks fit very nicely into that plan as well.
And I think Glenn, early in the week, also Glenn Esterson, we had this conversation, and it was a very, also, I think, holistic approach to it. You know, this is a very unique business. You have tenants as integral part of your business. So if you looking at it from standpoint of a few years turnover, that, I mean, we are not looking at it this way, although kind of our first deal was somewhat going in that direction. But you understand that you will build wealth long-term if you do provide long-term value to residents. So there is no question about it. And that's how wealth is built. So it's not going to come to you in 3 years' time and all of a sudden you're rich and your family is taken care of. And although this acquisitions of large number of properties, assets is sounding very attractive, Spencer will know better than anyone, because this is how most of the Seco community is comprised of people who own for long term, and one park supports generations. So that's really, it's not going to be fast. It's going to be, it could be really enjoyable business for the family, for partnerships. Yet it probably should be looking at it with a longer term approach. Just my 2 cents.
Very good. Well, I know we're coming up to the hour. I can hear the New Yorkers.
Oh yeah, Vegas happening.
Wondering what that was. I was like,
oh yeah, no, it's 7 o'clock in New York, guys. Yeah, it's as I was saying yesterday when we had the networking part. 7 o'clock in New York, essential workers are being honored by residents of New York City by banging and yeah, all kinds of noise making.
I'm looking for people to mute. I'm like, what's going on?
Awesome. No, I think it provided a ton of value here in the last hour. Very excited about this. Appreciate everyone making the time to jump on, and we'll send out the recordings to everyone that participated as well, and to the audience. So thanks so much. If there's any, if you want to share, maybe where can folks best reach you?
What's our website, Katrina? It's mhpteam.com,
Yeah,
right?
mhpteam.com. Very simple. And MHP Tribe, it's a Facebook group. Yeah, all these conversations, just I love these conversations. This is all happening all week long. MHP Tribe on the Facebook. Yep. So please come join. Would be happy to see you guys.
Charlie, Spencer, do you want to give websites or somewhere that people could reach out? Or?
Our company is Pentagon Properties. So if you want to look at the company website with our 4 communities and homes for sale, that's pentagonhomes.biz. My email address is my first name at my last name.com. So Spencer at Roane, ROANE.com. And if you're making note of cell phone numbers, it's 678-428-0212. And then SECO that we've talked about before is secoconference.com.
Nice.
Yeah. And Tom Lucky shared the SECO conference website already.
Hey, Spencer, do you have any properties you want to sell?
Already going direct to owner.
Look, local people got really excited.
At a 4 cap.
I'll take it at 13.
Well, okay, cool. And then Charlie, you threw your stuff in there as well. So we got the MHC team, mhcteam.com. Very cool. Well, yeah, no, I appreciate everyone jumping on the line here. That's it. We made it through the marathon day. We're 11 hours in.
Yay.
Good job.
Great job, guys.
Appreciate everyone that.
Me and Dylan.
Can't believe everyone that stuck around this whole time. But congratulations and definitely applaud yourselves for that. Hopefully, we all got a tremendous amount of value from this, and we'll have even more value from some of the replays. And yeah, if you want to hang out, if anyone wants to stick around and chat or network, obviously feel free. Depending on how everyone's doing, we can do breakout sessions or sit here and chat, whatever everyone wants to do. But it's
Awesome.
It's almost time for a drink.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Awesome.